congratulations on a fantastic evening. This place looks great, the food is delicious, the camaraderie is good, and the philosophy is right. So thank you. It's great to be back together. It was a couple of long years there where everything got interrupted, and good to be back with friends this evening, and good to be in a place where everybody is, let's just say, relatively like-minded. Doesn't happen as much as we like. So, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're going to remember this night because it is so pleasant. Some of us are going to remember it because it's just a pleasant night. It's time we're back together. Some of us are going to remember it because it's, a week after the Jayhawks won it all. In spirit of bipartisanship, I watched the game with a bunch of K-State people, and we were all going the same way. I was going a little faster than they were, but we were all going the same way. Some of us are going to remember tonight because it's not we get to hear from our friend Matt Schlapp. Matt, we are glad you are here. Thank you very much. But one thing I hope we'll all remember about tonight, we were together right here in Leavenworth when there were only 213 days left until we get to fire Laura Kelly. So I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but our current governor, whose name I'll try not to mention again, she found religion about 48 hours after Glenn Young won the governorship in Virginia. I barely recognize her now. She's running TV ads with Donald Trump. I mean, dogs and cats running together in the street. And about every third word out of her mouth is the word bipartisan. This is bill signing time because the legislature wrapped up last week, sent her a bunch of bills, and she'll get around to the vetoes here before too long. But first she's signing all the bills. Of course, she puts out a release every time she signs one. And they're all bipartisan bills. Everyone, you look at the headlines, every one of the news releases, everyone is bipartisan. I've got a mathematical secret to share. If you are a Democrat governor in Kansas, every single bill you sign into law is bipartisan because you can't pass a bill without Republicans in the legislature. That's just a fact. But in the spirit of being very balanced, I thought I'd say something bipartisan here tonight. We have a great Republican gathering, and I am actually going to quote a Democrat. I know. So there's that old phrase from Harry Truman, give him hell, Harry, right? Kind of became famous in the Truman years. And there's a story, I don't know if it's true or somebody made it up, but it's a great story about Truman. He walked into a room one time and somebody yelled, "Are you going to give him hell, Harry?" He said, "I'm not going to give him hell. I'm just going to tell the truth, and they're going to think it's hell." So this much I can promise you. For the next 213 days, we are going to tell the truth about the Kelly administration. And the bottom line is, the truth is, we can do better in this state. Yeah. We can do better if you want to rewind to the COVID times. We can do better than a governor who thought that she somehow magically had the authority in our system of the rule of law to wave a hand and prevent Kansans from gathering together for the purpose of congregate worship on Easter, no less, under the penalty of making it a crime. We do better than a governor who thought that it was a good idea to divide businesses into those that were essential and those that were non-essential, and shut down those declared non-essential. A third of our small businesses vanished during COVID. Some of them vanished because of COVID, but more of them vanished because of the actions of the government in ordering them shut, while in many cases their competitors stayed open. I don't know, you may have noticed that our current governor, my opponent, she likes to talk about all the jobs that have been created on her watch. We'll set aside the issue of whether her numbers are correct, and we'll set aside the more important issue of whether she had anything to do with the creation of any of those jobs. Last time I checked, it was entrepreneurs with capital who take risks and create jobs. It wasn't the government waving a wand. But even setting that aside, what she never seems to be able to mention, people, is that even with all these numbers she claims, we still have fewer jobs in Kansas today than we had before she took office. Let me say that again. There were more Kansans working on the day Laura Kelly took the oath of office than there are today after all of these jobs she claims credit for creating. Because she fails to mention that before these jobs were created, she was the governor who destroyed more jobs than any other in the history of this state. We're going to remind Kansans that we can do better just in terms of basic competence in running government organizations. And all I have to say is $700 million of our dollars walked out the door at the Department of Labor and went to crooks and fraudsters, while at the same time, and this is important, Kansans who were laid off from work in Leavenworth or Kansas City or Wichita or wherever, and were legitimately entitled to and needed unemployment benefits to make a car payment or a house payment or put food on their table, they couldn't even get their government to answer their phone calls or return their emails. And you know what the response is when we point that out to our friends on the other side? They usually say a couple of things. First of all, they say, we didn't lose $700 million. Those auditors, they didn't know what they were doing. We only lost $290 million. You know what? I think they're wrong, but I'll be glad to fight on that turf. If they want to concede, they lost $290 million tax dollars. And the other thing they say is, you know what? It wasn't our fault. We inherited this clunky old computer system that's, been around since before the moonshot or something like that. And it was those darn Republicans who didn't fix it. You know the question I'm going to ask at some point? I'm going to say, who exactly was the ranking Democrat on the Kansas Senate Ways and Means Committee for all of those years you're complaining about when nobody did anything to fund this new system? I believe that would be Laura Kelly. I believe that would be absolutely true. Don't tell her I'm going to ask that. We'll save that for an appropriate moment. We can do better than leadership that does not share our values on life or on the Second Amendment. We can do better than leadership that thinks it is somehow impermissible and it should be unlawful discrimination to say that if you're born biologically male, you shouldn't compete against our daughters when they're in school trying to win a scholarship or just win accolades for being good competitors. We can do better. We can do better than a governor who put together a commission on, I actually don't remember what she called it, but it was her racial profiling commission. It reported back and suggested that our law enforcement officers in Kansas are systemically racist. How many of you here have met a systemically racist cop in Kansas? I'd really like to know, genuinely. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have bad apples. There are bad apples in every profession. But where is this systemic failure that this governor's commission pointed to? I would like to know. And I don't know. And I've read the report. We can do better than a governor who thinks that somehow money grows on trees, and who, if her budget were simply adopted by the legislature, if they just said, yes, we're going to do what you asked, would take us from having the largest cash on hand surplus in the history of this state this year to being about $400 million underwater in 2027. Let me say that again. It reminds me of, the kid who gets the big unexpected inheritance, and instead of paying the bills or doing themselves right for life or doing what's responsible, goes out and buys the new car and blows it on the vacation and spends it on stuff they cannot afford down the road. Thankfully, our legislators have stood up and said we're not going to do that, and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for your time. So we're just going to tell the truth, and I think a majority of Kansans are going to think it's hell. And we're going to close our argument with this, and this is the last thing I'll say about this subject tonight. I think the biggest sin the Kelly administration has committed is not any one of these policy issues, although, believe me, they're big enough, and we have plenty to disagree on. I think the biggest sin this administration committed was squandering 3 years that they were entrusted by Kansans to lead this state. And I ask you this, what has this administration accomplished in the first 3 years in office? What did they even try to accomplish before Glenn Youngkin got elected governor of Virginia, and they suddenly woke up and realized there's an election coming, perhaps we ought to listen to things Kansans actually care about. So we're going to make that case over the next months. Let me close my remarks tonight and we'll let Matt get up here. I just want to say this. I get the question sometimes, how you doing? Are you sleeping okay? Is your stress level? What's your blood pressure doing? Those are all come, they're genuine questions, and I am grateful for them, although they're a little personal, but that's beside the point. And I'll close on this, I'll tell you what I tell everybody when they ask us, I'm doing great. I'm doing great because there's no point in worrying about things you cannot control, and in this race there are only 2 things I can control. Number 1, I will promise all of you, as your nominee, nobody will work any harder for the next 213 days to earn the votes of Kansans in every corner of this state, whether it's the smallest town out west or the middle of Wyandotte County. And we don't just want Republican votes, we want unaffiliated votes, and we want as many Democrats who see the world our way. They just haven't changed their party affiliation yet, and they're out there. Nobody's going to outwork us. And number 2, I'm going to vote for me. Beyond that, this isn't up to me. It's up to all of you and about 600,000 Kansans who are going to decide the direction of this state. I want to thank you for your help and your support and your encouragement. We need your work over the next 213 days. We are going to get this job done, and we are going to do better. God bless you all.
You guys settle down over there. Out of control. Attorney General, that was great, great speech. We all can probably say unequivocally that we will be supporting you 100% over the next 213 days. With that being said, I am absolutely honored to actually get a chance to talk to our keynote tonight, Matt Schlapp. He is a true American, true patriot, and what's the best part about him is that he's a great family man and a great human being. So with that, I will be happy to turn over the mic to my new friend, Matt. Thank you.
Why is it the table closest to the bar is always the most enjoyable? I don't know why that is. But it's an honor to be with you. I'm sorry it took so long, Lynn, to get here, but we got it done. And it was fun to be on the campaign trail with your mom and go throughout Kansas to help our great candidates, including now Senator Marshall. I still call him Dr. Marshall because I think that's a higher title in this world than Senator, but we're glad he's there. And Derek, I just say to you, I think we have known each other a really long time. Let's not go into the years. But this is a critical race. We're behind you 1,000%. Anything you need, we got to get done. With Washington so screwed up, probably hopelessly, it's the governors and the AGs and the treasurers and really everybody that really are the first line of defense. So good luck to you. You've got a really important job to do to win. I have enough self-esteem to be able to admit to all of you that most of you have said, "Where's your wife, Mercy?" I don't take it wrong, I promise you. I take it in the spirit in which it's meant. She's sorry she couldn't be here with me. I think some of you know we have 5 girls. Some people have said, "Why would you wear a pink shirt to Leavenworth?" I said, that's my silent protest that I actually know what a woman is. And after the vote this week, one definition of a woman is Mitt Romney. No, that's kind of mean. A little bit low, I know, a little low. There's no reporters here. Oh, there's a camera. There we go. We'll send that to Utah. That's okay, I'm good with it. But I think what we're noticing in our country is a destruction of truth, a destruction of common sense. Mercy and I have had our own experience over the last couple of years. You all have too. This brave woman back here who ran for school board, and all of you who run for office. The fact is this. I said I run a conservative group called CPAC. You're all welcome to come. We're going to be in Dallas next in August. Mom's already clocked the time. It's about 6 hours for her. I know you can make it. You're all invited to come. We'll have a big Kansas reception. Hopefully we'll be celebrating some really good victories. And yes, so that's the first week of August. But I run a conservative group, and a lot of people say, well, are you conservative? Are you a populist? What's your definition of conservative? And I told everybody, great conversation, let's put it on hold. We're actually not fighting for conservatism right now. We'll get back to that. We're fighting for America. It's real basic. They're changing the definition of words faster than you could ever imagine, right? Why did that woman say, Judge Jackson, she couldn't define what a woman was? It's because if she says what she knows to be the definition of a woman, this crazy socialist, Marxist, radicalized Democratic Party will start to cancel her. Why would they cancel her? Because I don't know if you all know, probably hasn't hit Leavenworth yet, but there are 62 genders. That's what we're told when you go on social media or you get on some of these media shows and such. And there's a real craziness going on. And so we live in Virginia now, and people said, Glenn Youngkin. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I hope. I'm voting for him. I'm with him 100%. But Virginia's become a tough state. And these Democrats, they just kept doing this crazy stuff. Got crazier and crazier and crazier. Pretty soon, we've all seen the examples of the biological men joining the weightlifting contests against women, joining obviously the swim meets against women, and this is all exploding while Glenn Youngkin's running for governor. Now, he's a private equity, very wealthy guy, never been involved in politics. He had a moment of truth in front of him. Probably all of his friends were saying, hey, these issues, they're tough. Probably want to step back. Just talk about the standard stuff like tax cuts, which I believe in, by the way. Just stay where it's careful. But he did something brave. He said, no, this shouldn't happen. A biological man shouldn't be competing against a woman. In the state of Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we had a governor who said that after a baby was born, as long as you kept it comfortable, a parent and a doctor could decide to kill that child after birth. This is the kind of insanity, post-birth abortion in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the land of Jefferson. It's hard to imagine that this is happening. So Glenn Youngkin decided to take a step forward and say, I'm going to embrace these issues. He did the craziest thing I ever saw. He went into my local grocery store without a mask on. I thought he was going to get mauled to death. He lived to tell about it. And when the woman yelled at him, that hectoring person was on my plane today, by the way, who's just all over you, he just turned to her and he said, ma'am, this is about freedom and choice, and I'm going to choose to live my life the way I want to. You are welcome to choose to live your life the way you do. And I think when he did that, he kind of won my heart. And I don't know whether Laura Kelly thinks she's now Marjorie Taylor Greene or what she thinks she is, but a little bit of that to me, General Schmidt, is that she's scared to death. She's so scared that she's going to try to deceive everybody about what she thinks. But for the rest of us, for me, I'm putting aside this idea of conservatism for a little bit, and I'm going to go talk about America. And so I had a publisher come visit me, because he realized what Mercy and I had gone through. She worked for President Trump in the White House. She worked for President Trump at the campaign. I had been advising the president for those 4 years, and we took all kinds of heck for it. I mean, lost just about all the friends that we had left out there, were attacked constantly by the media. Then they said, would you write your story about what this cancel culture thing is all about? about? I said, oh, I don't think I could write a book. And everybody who worked for me told that publisher, like, you'll never write that book. You just won't do it. You're going to waste your time. And a friend of mine who's an academic, a PhD, real smart guy, Neil Hudson, he said, guess what, I'll write it with you. I said, okay, now you're talking. And I think we're going to have some copies of the book here tonight. And we started writing about cancel culture. And we would write, I would write late at night. And something hit both of us, and he really put the nail on the head. This was what's going on in this country is not cancel culture. Cancel culture is you can't go on a TV show because they think you're a hater, a racist, or whatever the latest slur is on an American. Cancel culture isn't just you lose a promotion because they think your views are extreme. All that's repugnant. And by the way, un-American should be illegal. But what's going on in this country is something much worse. So we called our book The Desecrators, because what we all have to understand is this is not a political fight we're in, partly political. This is a spiritual fight. When you can change genders, when you can target little kids like my little girls to create confusion over their gender and to sexualize them at tender ages, sexualize them before even the mom, my wife, or me had a chance to engage them on some of these topics because we want to choose the timing of some of these topics. We don't want Disney to choose the timing of these topics. We don't want to trip into it. Think it's a movie. This is evil. And so it really hit me. We had a CPAC a couple years ago, and this, what I call Chinese Corona, had started. And they told me I was a racist for calling it Chinese Corona. And I was like, buckle up, because I'm just getting started thinking of things to call this virus. And I think Trump calls it the Wu flu. That's a good one. That's better. He's more creative than I am. But the point is they accused us of being an international super spreader at CPAC. We had one documented case of a doctor who came from New Jersey who had corona. By the way, all my family's there. Everyone's very worried about this whole thing. We have a doctor that comes in, he gets very sick, he has to leave. I find out a week after CPAC. I eventually find another doctor, a dentist, had gotten corona. After that case became public, which should never become public because that man has a right to his medical privacy. Isn't it funny that everyone has a right to medical privacy unless it's one of us? And they wanted his name, and they fought me every which way to try to get his name, and they tried to hound this guy to figure out he's literally fighting for his life in intensive care. And these reporters kept writing that CPAC started an international super spreader. I was sitting on my porch one day, feeling pretty low. I was like, what's going to happen? Are we going to have 1,000 people get this disease? Are people going to start dying? I mean, I'm not a doctor. I was trying to listen to that stupid Sanjay Gupta on CNN. I was scared to death. You know, the Chiron, all the people that were going to die and everything else. And I know a lot of people did die. It's a serious virus, but of course they tried to make it political, right? It's all about making it political and blame us. They blamed CPAC for the spread of coronavirus with one case. Down the street, APAC had 7, 8, 10 cases. Every major Democratic candidate for president that year went to APAC. You couldn't find a story about the corona cases in APAC. We had 10,000 people in a sweaty ballroom. One man came in sick. We found that it was 2 men who came in sick. That's all we had. 10,000 people. I did the math. That meant it was harder to get than they were saying on CNN. That this thing was harder to contract and certainly harder to get a serious form of. And I remember looking at some of these international publications. They have my hand with a red circle around it. This is when he gave corona to Donald Trump. This is when he gave corona to Ivanka Trump. This is when he gave corona to Larry Kudlow. They circled all the handshakes. I never had corona. I got it 2 years later. It was pretty cool. I had 2 weeks on the couch. I didn't do a damn thing. My wife was so mad at me. She's like, get off the couch. I'm like, no, I've got corona. I'm taking it for 2 weeks. But they blamed us for that. And I got one of these editors who was actually a conservative editor on the phone. And I was dealing with everyone, right? And I was like, you're going to bankrupt our organization by lying about us. And then I realized, well, that's what they were trying to do. They wanted everyone to sue us, and they wanted us to get shut down. This is before they shut down the whole economy. And I talked to one conservative editor, and I said, why are you lying? Why are you acting like we have more cases than we have. We have one case. I talk to the man every day in intensive care. And it's touch and go. But I pray every day, visit. Why don't you root for him to make it instead of rooting for him to die? So you can blame us. And he said, he gave this answer. He said, Matt, that's what you get for being so overboard for Trump. And I said to myself, I get it. I get it, which is we've suspended honor and truth and just decency for this killer game of politics. And because Trump is too aggressive for some Republicans and all socialists, anybody who stands near him is a target. And then they shut down the economy, right? And they shut down, as you were saying, shut down our churches. I had to call my pastor and say, why are you shutting down the church? I love this man. He's a good man. He's like, I have to. The state's telling me I have to. It's like, you can't listen to the state. You have to listen to the higher authority. You know this. This one isn't Caesar's decision. And I found myself getting angrier and angrier. And then, of course, what happened where we live is the riots started. The riots. And we were doing a lot of TV. You couldn't say who started the riots. Couldn't say it. Right? People would say this. They'd go on these shows and they'd say, well, there seems to be a lot of violence out there with people taken to the streets who are upset about police brutality. And I would say, okay, I get that part. What are you leaving out? There's a group that is very well funded, Black Lives Matter. So when I got on TV, I would say that. I would say this is all being organized by Black Lives Matter, by the woke corporations who are giving them money day after day, by George Soros. It has nothing to do with fighting racism. If they were wanting to fight racism, I would have listened. This, my friends, was about fighting America. It was about sowing racial division. It had nothing to do with bringing us together. It had everything to do with tearing us apart. And then, with my CPAC staff, we checked out what they believed in. I don't know if you know this, Pastor. No families. No gender, no marriages, no profit, abortion through 9 months. This was the most extreme, radical agenda you could ever imagine. Had very little to do with race, even in their platform. Had everything to do with destroying civilization. Everything that's good, everything that's holy, everything that's truthful, everything that makes you happy. Everything that your kids need to learn and your grandkids need to learn so that they can be happy. And all of that creates a society, a civilization, right? They're trying to take it all down. And I put a few tweets out that said that. When Mitt Romney marched with Black Lives Matter, I said Mitt Romney just marched for legalized abortion through 9 months, and now in the Maryland legislature, it just passed in Colorado 28 days after birth. You can still kill that child. This is what's becoming the law in these blue states. This is their agenda, the dehumanizing of the human being, ripping the dignity out of the idea that each and every one of us, no matter our race, is created in the image and likeness of God. We know this. They are trying to teach our kids and our grandkids that that's not true. And so when the race riots happened and the destruction happened, we continued to realize there is a complete revolution going on in this country. And obviously in the middle of the Trump campaign, couldn't imagine a worse thing. But if you had to realize the spiritual dimension of all this, that was the time to realize that where China creates some kind of Frankenstein virus in a lab and sends it loose on the civilized world. And then, from there, we're all staying in our houses. I hate these masks. I'm getting grumpier and grumpier. We used to rank the people in our family. We have, there's 7 of us, 5 girls, 2 parents, and 2 dogs. That's 9 people. I was number 8 or 9 every week. The kids would all rank us. I did worse than the dogs. I was getting angrier and angrier. And I started to use profane language about how angry I was. And then we hit the election. And let me just be clear. I talked a little bit about this at my table tonight. I was asked by Ambassador Grinnell to fly out to Nevada after the election. And we had been told there was this great legal strategy, and we had a great legal strategy. And I told people on this plane as we were flying out to Nevada, I was like, we won't find that much. I'm a veteran of the 2000 recount in Florida. I've been involved in a lot of recounts when I worked at the White House in the political shop. I oversaw, a lot of crazy elections like Norm Coleman, who actually won his race and he was denied a seat. John Thune, who won his race the first time, was denied his seat, all because of fraud. Dino Rossi, who won his seat twice, was denied his seat in the state of Washington. Fraud has happened for a long time on their side, and I just told them we would find thousands of cases, but probably not enough to turn the difference. And then I got there and I literally felt sick to my stomach for what we found. Tens of thousands of provable illegal votes. So much evidence that we had to, when we went to court over and over and over again. We had to rent a separate car in Carson City to fit all the evidence. I had people calling me in my house when I was in Virginia in tears because of the illegal schemes that they witnessed. Their fear of coming forward with what they saw, because what? Guess what? The violence is purposeful. Why do they push the violence? Because people get scared. They get intimidated. The people in Nevada were intimidated to come forward with what they found. They were afraid the violence would come to their families, to their grandkids, that their kids and grandkids would be destroyed on social media. This is a real moment when they got us so backed down that we didn't even sometimes have the ability to say what they were doing. There was so much fraud in Nevada that I actually think the outcome should be reversed, and then we got the same or a similar readout of what happened in Georgia, Mercy and I did. So all this happens, they can blame basically me for starting an international super spreader of Chinese corona when I don't even get the virus. And then they can shut down our economy, they can shut down everything, right? And then they can get us so back down that they can break the election laws in 7 states. And I think you should thank God that you live in a state that doesn't have these endemic problems, but these other states, it is outrageous what they did. They basically had double the number of mail-in ballots, they didn't check the signatures, and they wouldn't let anybody check. And these cities are now, they're not bipartisan cities, they are hard left socialist cities. And I always told everyone, if you'll burn down the city and shoot some cops, what's a little voter fraud? Yeah. That's like a tiny little infraction compared to those other terrible things. And so when the publisher said, would you write this out? I was like, I don't think it'll be very good, but I need to do it. So I would, at like 11 o'clock at night and midnight, I would write these words, and they would start flowing out. And I would start remembering all the people that I met on the campaign trail. I was on that big Trump bus. Mercy was on the Women for Trump bus. We were all over this country. We just never stopped. We gave it everything we had to try to make sure that our country could be saved. And we realized, we had this theme in our head, we realized it was America versus socialism. This was the first time that America was going to embrace socialism and potentially put a socialist administration in the White House. And you can see what the consequences are. But I want to say one thing about what we're going through. I know a lot of you are upset. I know you're mad. You don't like the fact that the national news media lied to the American people about the state of Joe Biden's mental facilities. In other words, he's gone gaga. And they covered it up. And they told you he was doing the responsible thing because we have a virus. But they realized that they had to push the virus so that he could stay in the basement. And we realized that they covered up for this outrageous amount of financial wrongdoing in the Biden family, which is all found on that laptop. And they wouldn't let any of the stories about the laptop. There was one or two. The New York Post is one I can think of. Even the New York Times wrote one story about it. It was all spiked because the social media titans decided that wouldn't meet their narrative. And then, of course, Mark Zuckerberg and others spending almost $500 million in order to have an elaborate scheme to, quote-unquote, fortify the election, which meant break election rules so that mail-in ballots can have no security. You can vote as many times as you want in some of these jurisdictions. You can flood that box with harvested ballots. And all while the fact that Mark Zuckerberg and these other social media titans, everything about their business is in front of Congress and this administration. Everything. So that was an investment they were making to get the guy they wanted in the White House. So I can see why everyone's mad. I was mad. That's why I wrote the book. That book was very cathartic for me. I started to feel better. I started to feel like there was hope. Because I realized if we're really in this spiritual conflict, and I think we're in that spiritual conflict, God's in heaven. God's the author of truth. God knows what we're going through. And you have this idea of America being an exceptional country. An imperfect country that allows a lot of terrible things like abortion and other things. There's no perfect country. And our history is not perfect either. And by the way, our history isn't perfect on race. No one's trying to whitewash the good and the bad of America. But when we took CPAC on the road overseas, we've been to Australia, we've been to Korea, we've been to Japan, we're going to go to Hungary, we're going to go to Israel, we went to Hong Kong. We marched with those students in Hong Kong. Let me tell you something about those students in Hong Kong. They know our songs. They love our flag. They would wave our flag at their own protests against the communist regime in Beijing. Why? Why can the students of Hong Kong love and revere America and find it to be the example of freedom that inspires them to protest? And we can't do the same thing here. Why are we teaching our kids, with our taxpayer money, to hate our own country? To call it racist? And this one really floors me. This happens. I know it doesn't happen here. So I'm bringing you tidings of what's happening in these terrible other states. They teach our kids that the Republican Party has switched with the Democratic Party and is now the party of Jim Crow. We're the racist party. I sit down each one of my girls when it gets to this point, and I walk them through the creation of this great Republican Party. Great presidents like General Eisenhower. You go through our history, you should be proud to be a Republican. I'm mad at the Republican Party a lot, so don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a tough critic. But I will not allow the Republican Party to be called the racist party in 21st century politics. That is wrong. We are the party that was established to end slavery. We know this as Kansans. To fight for the civil rights of those former slaves. To fight for their voting rights. Greater percentages of Republicans voted for the civil rights bills that went through Congress than the Democrats. When those bills went through, the Democrats established Jim Crow, the KKK, and all these other entities to try to prevent these Americans from having their rights. Somewhere in the process, with these Marxists that like to change words, destroy history, take down statues, and replace it all with this fiction and this propaganda, we got on defense. We allowed them to take the field. Because we thought, well, yeah, we did that one bad thing here, and yeah, I'm not perfect, and there's a speck in my eye, and I shouldn't have done that. And you start, because that's how we are, we're ethical. I'm not perfect, that's true, I'm not perfect. The party's not perfect. Boy, we probably should have done this better. While we're doing all that, like decent people do, they lie about everything. And they take the field. And the worst thing is they're taking the brains and the minds of our kids and our grandkids. But something's happened. And I want you to know, when I was on the streets in Hong Kong with these kids, they're waving our flags and singing our songs. Several of them came up to me. A couple of them would come up and say, "Are you that guy with CPAC?" And I kind of got a little emotional. I thought, that's kind of sweet, you know? They know who I am. And then I realized I was the only 6-foot guy with white hair in the whole city. And so I did stand out. And they said, "We're worried about you." And I was like, "I'm worried about you too, you know. God bless your cause." And then another one would come and say, no, we're really worried about you. And I was like, "Well, what are you worried about?" And you know, it was kind of scary. Like, it was like to that wall, there's the police station, they have all the lasers pointing at us, you know, they have the sound system telling us we have to, you know, disperse. And you know, it's a pretty heady scene. And it's getting dark. And one of these young men comes up to me, young all covered because of facial recognition software that the communists have. And he said, we're worried about you because when they start to shoot, you gotta move fast. And none of us think you can move fast. I said, I have short bursts of speed. And I'm good for 25 yards, but after that you gotta carry me back to the hotel the rest of the way. But what they would also say is, we think America's got our back. We think, when you go back to America, tell President Trump, for the first time, we feel like there's an American president that's standing here with us. Now, when I went to Hong Kong, I had no cell phone because, they destroy it and they track you and everything else. So I left that in Korea. When I went to Hong Kong, I was incommunicado. I couldn't talk to Mercy. I couldn't talk to anyone. I had a piece of paper. I put it in my shoe. It had John Bolton's cell phone number. It had Jared Kushner's cell phone number. It had Mike Pompeo's cell phone number. I was like, when we all get arrested, I'm calling in the posse. I never thought about the fact I didn't really have a phone to use to call the posse. But and then the last night we were there, we were with this great hero, Jimmy Lai, who's now in a Chinese prison, and the house was firebombed because they didn't like the fact that the CPAC crew was meeting there with Jimmy. I guess I would leave you with this, which is, here is why America is exceptional. Because everybody who loves freedom across the globe is with you in this room. They're rooting for us. They believe in our Constitution. They pray to God that they could have a Constitution with real words that mean things, that is all intentionally written out, that can be changed if a supermajority of Americans want it changed. They would love to have, they'd give anything for that. They think America is the most special country ever created. This is true no matter where we go. Korea, Japan, Australia, they love this country. So I want you to know that we have not turned globalist, but there are freedom fighters all over this globe that want to make sure you win and want to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can kind of go away from whatever they came from. And they want to fire Pelosi. And they want to fire Schumer. And so our great cause is the following. I ask you, do you love your country? Yes. Do you love our history? Yes. Can you get our young people to fall in love with this country again? Yes. Can you be proud of her? Yes. And can you defend her? Yes. And that's what's on that's the obligation of all of us. Please, stop being too political. Do not back down anymore. Don't take any more steps back. We're at the edge of a cliff. We can't take another step back. If we do any more losing in politics, the country is over as we know it. Our only hope then will be to find a more violent way to restart this country, which we don't want. We don't want this. We've already been through a civil war. We don't want another one. What we want is to make people understand what a wonderful gift we have. This great, beautiful country. But she is in duress. And she needs each and every one of you right now. I'm not asking you for any money. I'm not asking you to do anything completely extraordinary. I'm simply saying tomorrow, when you get up and you have the opportunity to engage someone on what's at stake in this country, do it. When you see a young person who seems all confused and seems gentrified and cityfied and all these stupid values, engage them. Help them understand. My feeling is those people are hurting because they are so far away from the truth. Be there for them. Let's do this together. Let's do all we can to stand up and defend the country. I'm telling you, we're going to whoop them in November like they've never seen before. And I believe when we do that, we're going to keep rolling to 2024, and we got a chance one more time to save our country. And you're all a huge part of it. So thank you very much for having me here.